Most people think buying a new car is a simple financial decision. You pick the model you like, negotiate the price, choose whether to buy, lease, or finance, and drive away. But an accountant sees something completely different. Because that decision isn't really about getting from one place to another. It's about what that car will quietly cost you over the next 5, 7, or even 10 years. Not just in monthly payments, but in lost investment opportunities, reduced financial flexibility, depreciation, interest, insurance, maintenance, and one hidden cost that almost never appears on the contract. Here's the surprising part. Two people can walk into the same dealership on the same day, buy the exact same $45,000 SUV, and leave believing they made an excellent financial decision. 5 years later, one is glad they bought the car. The other wishes they had made a completely different choice. So what happened? The car was the same. The price was the same. Even their incomes were similar. The difference wasn't the vehicle. It was the financial strategy behind the purchase. And that's what most people never learn. By the end of this video, you'll understand how accountants evaluate one of the biggest purchases most Americans make, why the cheapest monthly payment can sometimes become the most expensive decision, and how to decide whether buying, leasing, or financing actually makes sense for your financial situation. Because when you stop looking at the monthly payment and start looking at the total financial picture, the decision becomes much clearer. Imagine two friends, Daniel and Marcus. They're both 35 years old. They each earn about $90,000 a year. They both have strong credit. And after years of driving older vehicles, they've decided it's finally time for something new. They walk into the same dealership. They choose the exact same SUV. At first, their conversations with the salesperson sound almost identical. Then something changes. Daniel asks the question most buyers ask. How much is the monthly payment? Marcus asks a completely different question. What will this vehicle actually cost me over the next 5 years? Not just the purchase price, the interest, the depreciation, the insurance, the maintenance, the fuel, the taxes and fees. And perhaps most importantly, what am I giving up financially by committing this much money to a car? It's a question many dealerships rarely hear, because most buyers shop for a payment. Accountants shop for total cost. That difference may seem small. In reality, it changes almost every financial decision that follows. One of the biggest mistakes people make when buying a vehicle is confusing affordability with value. A payment can feel affordable. That doesn't necessarily make the purchase financially smart. Imagine a dealership offering two loan options. The first is a 5-year loan with a payment that's a little higher. The second stretches the loan over 7 years. Suddenly, the monthly payment drops. Psychologically, that feels like good news. The car now fits comfortably into the monthly budget. Many buyers stop thinking right there. But accountants don't, because lowering the payment doesn't lower the price. It simply spreads the cost over a longer period. And in many cases, it increases the total amount of interest you'll pay. Meanwhile, the vehicle continues doing something else. Every single day, it loses value. Unlike a house, which may appreciate over time, most new vehicles begin depreciating almost immediately after leaving the dealership. That means you're making payments on an asset that's becoming less valuable with each passing year. This is where the conversation shifts from budgeting to wealth building, because every dollar committed to a car payment has another possible job. It could strengthen an emergency fund. It could pay down high-interest credit card debt. It could be invested for retirement. Or it could simply provide peace of mind during an unexpected financial emergency. This hidden trade-off has a name: opportunity cost. And it's one of the most important concepts in personal finance. Not because it's complicated, but because it's so easy to ignore. Picture someone named Rachel. After years of hard work, she finally receives a promotion. Her income increases by about $1,000 a month. Naturally, she wants to celebrate. She's been driving an aging sedan for nearly a decade. Now she feels she's earned something nicer. She visits a dealership. The salesperson structures a loan that fits comfortably within her new paycheck. Nothing seems irresponsible. She can easily afford the payment. Her friends congratulate her. Driving home, she feels successful. And for a while, everything goes exactly as planned. But then life starts happening. Insurance premiums increase. Unexpected home repairs appear. A medical expense arrives. Investment opportunities come and go. Suddenly, that extra income she worked so hard to earn already has a permanent destination. Her raise didn't create more financial freedom. It created a larger fixed expense. The car didn't just cost its purchase price. It quietly reduced her future flexibility. That's why accountants often ask a question most buyers never consider. What future choices am I giving up because of this decision today? Sometimes that's the most expensive part of owning a car. Now, this doesn't mean financing is automatically a bad idea. In fact, for millions of Americans, financing is the most practical and reasonable way to purchase reliable transportation. The important question isn't whether financing is good or bad. The real question is whether the financing terms work for you or against you. And this is where interest rates completely change the story. Imagine two buyers purchasing identical $40,000 vehicles. Emma has an excellent credit score. She qualifies for a very low interest rate. James has weaker credit. He qualifies for a much higher rate. They're buying the same vehicle, at the same dealership, on the same day. Yet by the time both loans are paid off, James could spend thousands more simply because borrowing money was more expensive. The vehicle didn't change. The financing did. And that illustrates one of the most important principles in personal finance. The cost of borrowing can be just as important as the cost of the asset itself. Research consistently shows that many consumers focus primarily on one number, the monthly payment. It's understandable. Monthly payments feel immediate. Total ownership costs feel distant. Behavioral economists call this present bias. We're naturally wired to place greater value on today's comfort than tomorrow's consequences. Car dealerships understand this psychology well. That's why conversations often begin with questions like, "What monthly payment are you hoping to stay under?" Notice what's missing. Rarely does someone ask, "What total amount would you like to spend over the next 6 years?" Once buyers anchor themselves to a monthly payment, it's much easier to extend the loan, add extra features, or increase the overall cost while keeping the payment within their comfort zone. Nothing feels dramatically different, except the total amount they'll eventually pay. This doesn't mean dealerships are doing anything wrong. They're responding to how most customers prefer to shop. But accountants approach the conversation differently. They keep asking one question: what does this decision actually cost over time? And when you start answering that question honestly, something interesting happens. Buying, leasing, and financing stop looking like simple payment options. Instead, they become 3 completely different financial strategies. And each one comes with its own hidden advantages, hidden costs, and hidden trade-offs. The first of those strategies, leasing, is often advertised as the most affordable. But is it really? That's where the story becomes much more interesting. At first glance, leasing almost feels like the perfect solution. The monthly payment is usually lower than financing. You can drive a newer vehicle every few years. Many leased vehicles remain under warranty for most, if not all, of the lease term, reducing the likelihood of large repair bills. For someone walking through a dealership, it's easy to see the appeal. A nicer vehicle, a smaller monthly payment, less worry about long-term maintenance. It sounds like you're getting more while paying less. But this is where an accountant starts asking a different question. What exactly are you paying for? When you finance a vehicle, every payment gradually builds ownership. Each month, you own a little more of the car. When the loan is finally paid off, the vehicle is yours. It may have lost value over time, but it still has value. You can keep driving it, sell it, trade it in, or simply enjoy years without a car payment. A lease works differently. You're not paying to own the vehicle. You're paying for the portion of the car's value that you're expected to use during the lease period, along with financing costs and fees. Think of it like staying in a hotel instead of buying a house. The hotel may be exactly what you need for a short trip, but years of hotel bills don't eventually make you the owner. The payments purchase the experience, not the asset. That doesn't make leasing bad. It simply means the goal is different. Imagine Olivia, a pharmaceutical sales representative. Her job requires frequent travel, meeting clients, and maintaining a professional appearance. She drives nearly 12,000 miles each year and likes having the latest safety features because she's on the road almost every day. For Olivia, leasing may actually make financial sense. She values predictable payments. She appreciates remaining under warranty. She plans to replace her vehicle every 3 years anyway. In her situation, paying for continual access to a reliable, newer vehicle aligns with her lifestyle. Now compare that with Michael. Michael works remotely. He drives only a few thousand miles each year. His current vehicle lasts him well beyond 10 years. He enjoys maintaining his cars and doesn't mind driving an older model once it's paid off. If Michael leased, he'd likely be paying for benefits he doesn't fully use. Buying, or financing and keeping the vehicle for many years, could cost him far less over time. Same country, different lifestyles, different financial goals, different answers. That's why accountants rarely say there's one best option for everyone. The smartest decision depends on how the vehicle fits into your life, not just your budget. Another factor many buyers underestimate is depreciation. New cars typically lose a significant portion of their value during the first few years of ownership. That sounds discouraging. Some people hear this and immediately conclude that leasing must be better because they avoid owning a rapidly depreciating asset. But the reality is more nuanced. Whether you lease or buy, depreciation doesn't disappear. Someone has to absorb that loss in value. When you buy, you experience depreciation directly because the vehicle you own becomes worth less over time. When you lease, depreciation is built into the lease payment from the beginning. You're still paying for it, just in a different way. The difference is who owns the remaining value at the end of the agreement. Understanding that distinction helps explain why comparing monthly payments alone can be misleading. A lower payment doesn't necessarily mean a lower overall cost. It simply reflects a different financial arrangement. Now let's talk about something that receives surprisingly little attention during the buying process. How long do you actually plan to keep the vehicle? This single question changes almost everything. Imagine Daniel finances his SUV with the intention of keeping it for 12 years. For the first 5 years, he makes monthly payments. Eventually, the loan is paid off. For the next 7 years, he continues driving the same reliable vehicle without making another loan payment. During those years, the money that once went toward the car can now be redirected. He increases retirement contributions, builds a larger emergency fund, invests consistently. The vehicle begins creating financial breathing room instead of consuming it. Now imagine someone who replaces their car every 3 years, whether by leasing or trading in a financed vehicle before it's paid off. That person may experience something very different. A nearly permanent monthly payment. Every few years, another contract, another down payment or fees, another financial commitment. The pattern becomes part of everyday life. Neither approach is automatically wrong, but they produce very different long-term financial outcomes. This is why accountants often encourage people to think beyond the excitement of getting a new vehicle. The real financial story usually begins several years after you drive off the lot. There's another hidden factor that doesn't appear on a loan agreement or lease contract. Lifestyle inflation. This happens when higher income naturally leads to higher spending. A larger paycheck makes a larger payment feel reasonable. The danger isn't that someone buys a nicer car. The danger is that every future financial decision begins expanding alongside it. A more expensive vehicle often leads to higher insurance premiums. Sometimes higher registration fees, more expensive tires, costlier repairs after the warranty expires. Even fuel expenses may increase depending on the vehicle. One decision quietly influences several others. Behavioral finance teaches us that spending rarely grows in isolation. Expenses tend to move together. That's why an accountant evaluates the entire financial ecosystem surrounding a purchase, not just the sticker price. So how should you think about buying, leasing, or financing? Instead of asking, which option is cheapest? A better question is, which option supports the life I'm trying to build? Because a car isn't an investment in the traditional financial sense. For most people, it's a tool that gets you to work, helps you earn an income, keeps your family safe, supports your daily responsibilities. The goal isn't to extract maximum profit from the vehicle. The goal is to receive reliable transportation at a cost that doesn't prevent you from reaching your larger financial goals. And that's where the final piece of the puzzle comes in. The decision isn't just about numbers. It's about balance. Balancing today's comfort with tomorrow's freedom. Balancing reliability with affordability. Balancing personal enjoyment with long-term financial security. Once you understand that balance, choosing between buying, leasing, and financing becomes much less confusing. But before making any decision, accountants usually run through one final framework. A simple set of questions that can prevent an expensive mistake before the paperwork is ever signed. So before you sign any contract, imagine an accountant sitting beside you asking just a few simple questions. How long do you honestly plan to keep this vehicle? Not how long you hope to keep it, not what sounds good today. But realistically, if the answer is 10 years or more, buying or financing and then keeping the vehicle long after it's paid off will often provide a lower long-term cost than continually replacing it. Next question. How stable is your financial situation? Do you have a healthy emergency fund? Are you carrying high-interest credit card debt? Are you already saving for retirement? Because if a new car payment leaves almost no room for unexpected expenses, the vehicle may be stretching your finances more than you realize. Then comes another important question. What is the true purpose of this vehicle? Is it simply reliable transportation? Does your career genuinely require a newer vehicle? Or are you upgrading because it feels like the next step after receiving a raise? There's nothing wrong with enjoying your success, but it's worth asking whether you're buying a car or buying a feeling. Because money often represents something deeper than dollars. For some people, it represents security. For others, success, recognition, freedom, or belonging. That's why financial decisions are rarely just mathematical. They're emotional. Understanding those emotions doesn't mean you ignore them. It means you make sure they're not making the decision for you. Now let's return to Daniel and Marcus. At the beginning of this video, both walked into the same dealership. Both could afford the same SUV, but they approached the purchase differently. Daniel focused almost entirely on the monthly payment. Marcus focused on the total financial picture. 5 years later, their experiences are very different. Daniel still enjoys his vehicle, but the long loan has delayed several other financial goals. Building investments took longer than expected. Unexpected expenses felt more stressful because a significant portion of his income remained committed to the car. Marcus made a decision that matched his long-term plan. He understood exactly what the vehicle would cost. He chose financing terms that fit comfortably within his budget, avoided borrowing more than necessary, and continued investing while making his payments. Neither man bought a different vehicle. The difference was how they thought about the purchase before signing the contract. That's the real lesson. Financial success often comes less from finding a perfect option and more from making decisions that fit your own circumstances. So, should you buy, lease, or finance a new car? The answer is in one word. It depends. For someone who drives many miles, keeps vehicles for years, and wants to eliminate future payments, buying or financing with the intention of keeping the vehicle long after the loan is paid off can make excellent financial sense. For someone who values driving a newer vehicle every few years, stays within mileage limits, and appreciates predictable ownership costs, leasing may be the better fit. And for many households, financing is simply the practical path that makes reliable transportation possible, provided the loan terms, interest rate, and monthly payment leave room for the rest of life. Because here's the truth. The smartest financial decision isn't the one with the lowest monthly payment. It isn't the one your friends recommend. And it isn't necessarily the one the dealership prefers. It's the one that allows you to own a dependable vehicle without sacrificing your future financial freedom. In the end, a car should support your life. It shouldn't control it. The people who build lasting wealth don't ask only, "Can I afford this payment?" They also ask, "What opportunities am I giving up if I make this decision?" That single question changes how you see every major purchase, not just cars. Because wealth isn't built by avoiding every expense. It's built by understanding the long-term consequences of the choices you make today. And sometimes, the most valuable thing you can drive away from a dealership with isn't a new car. It's the confidence that you made the right financial decision.